You're live.
We're live. Welcome to episode 9 of the Retro Bar podcast. And we're blessed this morning. We have another guest, and it is Sergeant Matt Randolph from the Ephrata Borough Police Force. So he's going to be talking about things to do with police. And if we get off that topic, we just get off that topic. But anyway, again, welcome to him, and thanks for taking time out of your day. Yeah. And not only that, but thanks for doing what you do for the community. So as we get into this, I'm going to let Matt sort of give a background of himself, and then, we're going to ask him questions. Paul, obviously being a retired police officer, is going to have questions that he's probably going to ask that he knows the answer, but he knows to ask the question. I'm going to try and refrain from asking something that I get arrested for. So anyway, Matt Randolph.
Well, thanks.
You are from where?
Appreciate it. So I am born and raised in Lancaster County. I lived for a number of years right outside of Lancaster City, in Lancaster Township, and then moved south to New Providence. And kind of grew up in New Providence,
all right.
Below Willow Street, below Lancaster City. I attended, I was homeschooled for most of my education.
Oh, really? Well, that's interesting.
Before that was a really popular thing. But I grew up in Solanco School District and had friends down there. I ended up going to 2 years of school at HAC, mostly at the Lancaster campus, and got an associate's degree in criminal justice. Okay. And then I was able to transfer those credits and go to Penn State at the Harrisburg campus.
All right.
And did 2 more years there.
Okay.
Till May of 2002. And then I started testing for police jobs and got hired at Ephrata in June, very end of June 2002.
Okay. And we were the lucky ones to get him.
All right.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sucking up because I don't work for him anymore. I used to work for him.
Oh, so he was above you.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
I mean, and that was, I guess that's one of my questions is how do you move up in rank? Is it based on time on the job, education, taking extra courses? Like, how do you get from the bottom guy to the top guy?
Yeah, so most departments, including Ephrata, have a sort of some criteria that you have to meet to get promoted from the basic patrol officer level up to a supervisory level. And then there are multiple levels. It depends on the size of the agency and sort of how many levels of supervision that makes sense to have. So when I started, one of the things that changed pretty quickly was I got hired by Ephrata Borough Police Department.
Okay.
And my employer now is still the Ephrata Police Department.
Okay.
They got rid of the name Borough in the title of the department, and shortly after I got hired in 2005, the Ephrata Borough contracted police services to Ephrata Township, where Paul worked at the time. And so the officers that worked at Ephrata Township then came over and became Ephrata Borough employees and worked for the Ephrata Police.
See, I thought you always were just a borough cop, not a
No, they were 2 separate entities, but we surrounded the borough as the township. So us working with them was like a natural.
Right. So right now there is no Ephrata Township Police Force anymore.
No, right. Ephrata Police Department covers both Ephrata Borough and Ephrata Township, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's really one community, and you draw arbitrary municipal lines and then split the services up.
Well, and you also recently cover Adamstown and West Cocalico as well.
Yeah. So going back a few years, we were also approached about providing police services for West Cocalico Township and Adamstown Borough. And we've been doing that for a while now.
Okay.
So we are now actually by both geography and number of officers, one of the larger police departments in the county.
Okay.
With that being said, it's the smaller departments like Akron, where it takes a lot to run a police department. And as time moved forward from, way back in 1995 when I started until now, the equipment and the training that you need to run a police department is not cheap. Right.
Yeah.
So for you to have a 4 or 5 man department, as opposed to contracting to a bigger department to have already has everything set up, financially makes a lot more sense.
Right.
Yeah. And especially, departments that might only have an officer or two working at a time, or maybe be even a part-time department where they don't provide 24/7, 365 coverage. A lot of the infrastructure that you need to have a police department is kind of wasted when you're not using it all the time.
Oh, and just this sort of a little fun fact here. My grandfather was at one point the entire West Calico Township Police Force back in the 60s, 70s.
There's a lot of that.
He, he pretty much did it like out of his house. Like he had it wasn't even a marked car. He had like one of those bubblegum machines you stuck on the roof. And, really, I honestly don't know in his entire career if he ever arrested it. It sort of reminds me looking back of like, Andy and Barney and Mayberry, but he was like, he did that. He was involved in the fire company. He did perk tests for building permits. Like he did all that, but it was just him. And now, things, well, obviously there's way more people than there was back then too, in all these townships. Now, when you,
he got off the subject for just a second. Your initial question was, how do you guys rise up in the ranks?
Okay. So you have criteria based on the size of the department. Shortly after I came, our department grew in size actually by about a third. And so that provided a little bit more room to move up. So our department currently now has 3 ranks between chief and police officer. Two promoted ranks. So we have police officer, and then the rank that is the direct supervisor for a police officer is sergeant. That's my job. And then we have lieutenants, and lieutenants are basically administrative. And then the chief of police is above them.
Okay.
We have detectives. We don't consider that a promotion. That's an appointment to a specialized job.
Okay.
Similar to like SRO.
The school resource officer was an appointed position.
Okay.
It's a good question though, because you go one jurisdiction over, like East Calico, I believe has corporals, right?
Yes.
We didn't have corporals, so that's a good question. Each department decides.
So, and it's based on the municipality, I guess, that decides here's how we're going to do it, or
they do, and also how much supervision you need. So if you have enough officers on one shift that you really need multiple supervisors so that you don't have so many people working with only one person supervising, then you need kind of another layer in between maybe the shift supervisor and team or division or platoon supervisor. So then you might add corporals, or you might add that as a rank because you don't have enough officers to really justify having the higher ranks in between. So some of that is just up to the department.
Being a sergeant, which you stated is one level above an officer, but you still obviously are out on the street, and what is different? What do you do or have the okay to do because you're a sergeant that maybe an officer wouldn't be able to do? Like, is there much of a difference other than pay rate, or you're pretty much doing the same job, but you have more responsibility. And what is that extra responsibility, I guess is what I'm saying.
So there is a little bit of a joke in policing that sergeant is the hardest working or the most difficult job because you still have your hands you're right every day.
Yeah.
But you're also responsible for supervising, for making decisions that need to be made like that might be above, to direct officers in what direction to go.
Okay.
Responsible for approving paperwork and reports, and there's a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
And then other jobs as assigned. So that could be some administrative things. It could be special or specialization within the department. So, for instance, one of our sergeants now is in charge of the bike patrol.
Okay. Which I haven't seen much of that. Like,
Well,
does that
the
still
sun's
exist?
just finally getting nice
Yeah,
and warm.
yeah,
I say
and,
it's
so
these
you'll
are fair weather bike patrol.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, the official bike uniform is shorts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
yeah.
Well, then I guess you got to wait till it warms up a little bit. Now, are your bikes? Do you have to actually pedal them, or are they electric bikes? And that's
Yeah.
sort of a little
So,
inside
yeah,
joke.
we argue about
So
that.
that's interesting. So for a long time, we used mountain bikes, traditional mountain bikes.
Right.
A couple years ago, we got a grant, a donation from WellSpan Health at Ephrata to purchase 3 electric bikes.
Okay.
And so they're kind of a cross between a mountain bike
right.
and electric. So you do kind of have to pedal them, but they are generally pretty assisted.
Yeah.
The officers really like them, and it's a really cool tool because, without expending a whole lot of energy, you can get around really well in tight areas.
Yeah.
But we're not so limited where we were before with a traditional bike in terms of your range and how quickly you can get someplace.
But I guess on the other hand, I mean, the next step would be you just go to a motorcycle.
Okay.
But I guess then you would be limited. Like with your bike, if you need to chase somebody down on the rail trail, you wouldn't be able to ride your motorcycle on the rail trail. So it sort of gives you a little bit of advantage of you can go places where you couldn't with a motorized thing, but yet still move quicker than the average criminal on foot.
So that, I mean, for me, and I wasn't a bike guy, but I could see it being a huge advantage because, if you're on one end, effort is on a hill.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you get a call from, that you got to go up a hill on a bike, and our bike guys are in shape, there's no doubt.
Right.
But
you
it's
still
a
expend
workout.
energy. Yeah.
So by the time they get to the call, you want them to be fresh and ready
Well,
to
right.
go. You know what I mean? You don't want them to be,
You don't have to
breathing
tell
heavy.
the criminal, hey, give me 10.
Yeah, right. You gotta, so
I
I
catch your breath just when you get there.
as much as I do like electric bikes, I love that these guys are having it. So
Well, it does. I mean, it
really
it
helps.
does help because, like you're saying, what is the point of expending all your energy to get somewhere
if you get there and can't
do your job?
Ironically, he is a huge bike guy and not an electric bike guy.
Right.
Like he does, I don't know, you'll do 60 miles. I don't even know how many you do. You do a ton of riding.
Yeah, a couple
but
bike
he'd
rides.
probably rather do that for pleasure than work.
Yeah. I
would much rather do that for pleasure. Not wearing all of this.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. Back to your point on what, like a sergeant does, the sergeant as a street cop was huge because every situation is different.
Right. Well, yeah.
And whether it be a domestic, a crash,
Right.
I mean, everyone is unique. So as much as you can go to the book and says, well, if this happened, this is what you do as a cop. Everything, there's always little things.
Right.
The
real world is always different.
Yeah,
than those books
it's
in
not
every trade.
Right. So he is a fantastic resource, and all our sergeants were fantastic. That you could go to them and saying, "Look, this is what I got. What do you think?"
Yeah.
And to bounce back and forth, and was it a big part of your job? I would, in my view, and where that benefit is I could always count on them guys to give me good direction and which way to go and handle it. To be fair to everybody,
right?
Because you're going to end up in court. We don't want to expend the time and energy in court if we're not going to win.
Right.
Justice for the victim.
Right.
So,
Sure. And a lot of times it just takes a form of confirming and affirming the decision that the officer was leaning towards anyway. Sometimes they have an idea, but they're not 100% sure what the situation
you're
calls
just
for.
sort of
You're just
reinforcing their decision and making them feel comfortable proceeding with it.
Yeah. And also making sure that we dot our I's, cross our T's so that everything is in place and we don't miss things.
Right.
It's sort of a quality control in a lot of ways at the street level.
Yeah. That was Sergeant Snavely was one of the sergeants that I was under for a long time. And my English skills are not as good as what they should be, and he is very good at that, and he would correct me quite often, and
Right.
don't do an undefined pronoun in a sentence. That's not acceptable. Don't do that. And as funny as that may sound, he was preparing me, because when it went to court, and I had that, where the defense lawyer gets up and says, "Well, officer, you can't even write a report right. How are we supposed to believe what you're
Good, I'm
saying?
not
What
a
happened?"
cop.
Man, so
they wouldn't
it-
even understand what I'm saying.
that's a good, like you said, they review things, because they're reviewing it to make sure that when it goes to court or goes further, it's
Right,
right.
because I mean, that's the end of the day. That's,
Yes,
that's
could
when
be.
push comes to shove
Yeah,
in
Yes.
most cases.
Yes.
And yeah, you want to, I guess, like you say, be prepared, or it's sort of a waste of time and effort
Yeah.
to go through the procedure
Yeah.
if you're not. But
Yeah, when you're doing a disservice, so on every case there's a victim.
right,
Sometimes it's not defined. Sometimes it's society.
right,
But a lot of times it's defined, and that person had some loss or injury,
right. So
and we want to do right by them.
right,
And
right,
if the police do a sloppy job because it's quicker, or because they don't know better, or they didn't check something,
right.
it's not doing the best job that we can for the victim.
Nah, and this is off the rank thing now, but
Sure.
because you cover Adamstown, you have to go through East Calico basically to get there.
Yes.
Are you permitted, if you're traveling through East Calico and you see a guy speeding, are you allowed to pull a speeder over in their territory, or you have to radio and tell one of them cops to go get the guy? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
are you?
So there are laws that govern how police officers and authority transfers in different jurisdictions, whether it's their own jurisdiction or a jurisdiction that they might go through to get to another part of their jurisdiction. And generally, the more serious the crime, the more leeway that it allows
Well,
that
and that
officer
makes sense. Obviously, if you see somebody
have
beating somebody
justification.
up,
Yeah.
you should be allowed to stop it.
We wouldn't stop somebody for a summary traffic violation in another jurisdiction, absent some other circumstances.
Right, right. Yeah, I didn't know how that worked.
Now, it's in certain cases it's permissible, but I mean, a speeding violation is a very low level
right,
offense
and
in the
that's why I
scheme of
used that.
offenses.
I
And
mean,
so,
because obviously, like
yeah.
I said, if you're heading to Adamstown and you see some guy beating some other guy up on the side of the road, I would suspect
certainly
that you're
gonna-
allowed to stop
Yeah.
and prevent that without
Yeah.
causing a big to do between the
Sure.
police departments.
Well, and that just happened recently. Was it East Lampeder? I'm not quite sure what department. They were going to court in Lancaster City, and on the way into court in the city, within the bounds
Right.
of the city, they witnessed a guy. I think he was beating the girl up. I'm not
I'm
I
not sure on
think
the
there was
details.
it was
Yeah.
something that was needed to be dealt with right
Right.
away. And he immediately pulled over and he took care of business. Lancaster City came out, backed him up, took over the case, because
Right.
he can't prosecute at that point. He's a witness.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, that does happen.
Yeah. Well, and I, I
Not
didn't know.
often, not
I didn't know
often,
if there's like, if you, I would hope that you guys in East Calico and Northern Region all get along with each other, but I didn't know if there was ever the incidence of, hey, you stepped on her toes there kind of thing, where, because you always.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that in general, we have very good relationships with the agencies that neighbor us.
Well,
and,
right.
and
I mean,
the
I would hope,
officers
okay.
have good relationships, but you do want to be careful about stepping on toes.
Yeah.
It's not our jurisdiction, and
Right.
so we're a guest there.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
especially if we're just traveling through. If we get asked to go help them with
Well,
something, that's a
right.
whole different
Yeah.
story.
Well, yeah.
But just traveling through, and we do that routinely with jurisdictions that are more spread out.
Yeah.
Now,
Now,
we have to be careful.
how many on a normal day or night in West Calico and Adamstown is there? And if I ask something, you don't want to give away secrets, just don't
Sure.
answer. Is there like just one officer in those distant jurisdictions, or do you have two or three routinely there, or?
Yeah, so it depends on the time of day, but we always have an officer that's assigned to and normally in the area, the geographic area of Adamstown or West Cocalico. So they share an officer full time.
Okay.
That we have the capability to send all of our
Well,
officers
right.
if,
But on
if
a,
it's needed.
on a,
But just on a regular
uneventful
day, like
yeah.
if somebody is in West Cocalico or Adamstown and back and forth all the time,
Okay.
that's one officer. But then, we have an officer that's in the western part of Ephrata Township, which borders southern West Cocalico.
Yeah.
And they might venture up there to help the officer that's up there handling, or if they're called up there for backup.
Okay.
It's pretty easy to sort of distribute all the officers around. That's another one of the things that the supervisor on a shift will do. So
Now,
the sergeant's going to make sure that we're not getting lopsided, or that we aren't putting all of our officers in one spot when, we have, the reality is from Ephrata, like downtown Ephrata to the northern end of West Cocalico or to Adamstown is a significant time difference.
Right. Yeah.
It's a 10 to 15 minute drive.
Oh, yeah, at least.
And we don't want there to be a delay in emergency response if it's needed. So we try to ensure that doesn't happen.
Now, do you typically rotate people into those areas so they're all familiar with the back roads and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
And it was more important a while ago. Now, with computer aided dispatching and mapping and GPS, it's slightly less
your way around, but
it's slightly less important. But I still think it's really important for officers to know the jurisdiction, know what's
because even
how to get around. Because
even with that GPS in an emergency, if you're like trying to figure out where you're going, even with GPS, it's going to take a little longer, and you're going to be a little more distracted than if you just know in the back of your head, hey, I go down there and make a left.
Yes.
Okay.
So before I retired, we had a case that we worked together, a business in Adamstown that had a burglary, and it appeared all counts to be active, like it was still happening when we were there.
Okay.
So that was between him and the lieutenant relocating or reallocating the manpower, right?
Okay.
Other jurisdictions came in to help us as we would them, so that we weren't short in, towards the Akron line, or it's very, there's a lot that goes into that to make sure the supervisor really has to look at that and says, where do we need to be? Because all of a sudden we got a lot of people in our area. And if there's a bad crash over here or something happening over here, and you're in the midst of a burglary over here, you still got to take care of this. And so now you are shifting things again, because one could take priority. This burglary looks like it needs a lot of attention right now.
Right.
And all of a sudden now you have a home invasion over here. Yeah. Well, that takes priority. So now that's not easy. And that falls on them.
Do you have the ability, like if you're the shift supervisor or whatever you're called, to know on a computer or wherever where each officer is at all times? Like, because I assume even if wherever you're stationed for the day, a lot of times you're just, I hate to say aimlessly cruising around, but you're patrolling the area.
Mm-hmm.
And like if some of the people in the Ephrata Borough Township area all just on a whim, not knowing any better that the other guys there just all happen to head out to Lincoln or whatever. Do you, as the supervisor, does each car have its own little, I don't know, tracking device that you see, hey, what are you four guys doing over here? Can you see that, or must you communicate via radio or?
Yeah, I mean, so without getting into a whole lot of detail, we have within the jurisdictions, we have assigned zones, right?
Okay.
And officers are expected to be generally in that zone because they're primarily responsible for what comes into that calls that come in that area.
Okay.
And that's so that we have a nice distribution, and we design those based on general call volumes and things like that. So more rural areas are going to be bigger, and more spread out.
Yeah.
And then, areas that have a lot more call volume, whether it's because of, high traffic numbers, high business numbers, or high density population, get more officers assigned. So there's some supposed to be in their
in their little zone
zones,
most
unless
of
they're
the
doing
time.
something. If they check out to with the supervisor to go do a follow up someplace else, or if they're going to grab lunch
Right.
or a break,
Yeah.
or do some paperwork that they have to do at station or some other responsibility, the supervisor's aware of that. So basically, it comes down to the supervisor being aware. Supervisor isn't 24/7 watching where every officer, every
Okay.
piece is, but
Right.
they're aware of generally what's going on.
Okay. All right. Let's
Yeah,
think
good.
of other
Oh, there's
questions.
a ton of questions. Yeah, there's a so it's, and I don't want to run out of time.
Yeah.
So a couple things. Number one, how many divisions or specialties can you go into in the department, like to help new people? If
Yeah.
there's some guy out
Sure.
there or girl out there that says, I'm thinking about being the cops in Ephrata. Like, so you can, yes, you can be the street cops, and some of them don't want to move up.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, some of them are very happy being on
Right,
the road,
right,
and they're
yeah.
very, they don't need.
Much like every business.
Yeah, they don't
some
want that
people
extra
just want to go in and do
responsibility.
this every day, and they don't
Right.
care to be the boss.
No, so I want to be, let's say, I want to be a street cop, and like I was crime scene investigation. I wasn't one of the SWAT guys.
Right.
So, but what difference areas you could get into?
So I mean, there's a whole lot of areas of specialty. Some are more involved than others. So some you might primarily be a patrol officer, but you take on added responsibility. So an evidence technician, crime scene technician would be a good example of that.
Okay.
Somebody that is specially trained, has gone through a lot of classes on how to collect evidence, how to find it and collect it and preserve it, and test it. Often those people are patrol officers, and we try to have a number of them available so that we don't have to call somebody in
Right.
if we need them. Sometimes we have to, or sometimes we need multiple ones if we have a larger, complicated crime scene or something like that. So there's evidence technicians. We talked earlier about bike officers. So officers get special training and ongoing training to be bike officers. So that's something you can do if you like that. People that especially like kind of community oriented policing tend to like that. It's also, we use them a lot for our special events. Certainly there's detective. That's one that everybody kind of thinks of. For us, it's a special assignment, but they do much more detailed investigations that require a lot of follow-up, sometimes traveling to interview people, things like that. There's SWAT team, right? So in Lancaster County, there's a regional interagency SWAT team that's
Okay.
made up of officers from lots of different agencies
Okay.
in the county. And so we have a number of officers that serve on that team. And they train a couple times a month. They get called out to any jurisdiction in Lancaster County that needs them. And so that's something that a lot of people kind of tend to want to aspire to.
Right. Right.
There's a number of specialties as far as training. So we do a lot of our training by having specially trained trainers within the department.
Okay.
So that could be defensive tactics, firearms, all kinds of.
Officer Martin does facial recognition,
Yeah.
and he is
Okay.
absolutely fantastic at it. So when he gets a video or a picture from a store that this person did bad stuff, but we don't know who it is, he's very good at that. And that's just one more thing, that opportunity that's more computer
Right.
Yep.
geared,
And that leads me. I was gonna ask about technology in today's world, and that's a good example of it being helpful to you within your department, and then probably also, I would assume, technology as a whole is probably is a benefit to you, even on the end where the criminal might be using technology, as in carrying a phone or posting something on Facebook, or
Sure.
I mean, it
Yeah,
gives you
absolutely.
a lot more leads than in the old days where you didn't have, you couldn't ping a phone, or you couldn't look up the guy's computer history, where he's probably leaving some kind of clues, whether he knows it or not, kind of thing. So I would assume technology is a big part of stuff you buy to help you, but also aid you in finding
Absolutely.
clues.
Absolutely. I mean, Paul can attest to, from the time that he started. I throw myself in that category, even though I don't feel like I've been doing this that long. It's been almost 20 years.
Well, right. And technology has changed drastically.
I mean, it just is, it's unbelievable the changes that we've seen and how that affects policing. I mean, it's there. I don't think there's any area of policing that isn't touched by how much it's changed.
Right.
I'm sure you started doing this job where you were using a film camera.
Oh, absolutely.
And
film camera, we had no computer.
Yeah.
Everything was done on a typewriter.
Right.
Okay. There was no cell phones. They gave you, your cruiser, your shotgun, your handgun, your handcuffs, and your radio, and go fight crime. And that's just the way it was back then. And wow, has it? And then we got computers. Oh my gosh, I could sit down and do a report on a computer. How cool was that? We had one computer for the whole department. I mean, yes.
Yeah. So now now instead of officers, so when I started, we were just getting into digital photography.
Okay.
And I mean, we can remember that the quality of those pictures it left some things to be desired. Right. And the storage was an issue because a lot of it was stored either on a floppy disk or like a CD or
squares.
I mean, it was
limited.
Yeah, it was definitely limited. And now we're at the point where every officer that's on patrol has a smartphone with a camera that's 10 times better,
right?
I mean, infinitely better than anything that we were using back then.
Right.
And they can take as many pictures as they want. They can take video. They can record a victim's or suspect's statement using audio recording if they need to. And that's just on one device that they're carrying. But that device also gives them access to information, so they can pull up the dispatcher's comments about the call and look back over it without asking the dispatcher to repeat themselves. They can access other databases if they need to. And they can use it to call somebody or text somebody. And it's a great backup communication device. I mean, radios, I think people think that we just talk back and forth on these things all the time and they work great. And Paul can attest that they work great, except for all the times that they don't. Which is a lot of the time.
And which is probably the exact time you really wish it would work.
It still is one of the main ways of communicating in an emergency, though.
Absolutely.
Because it is quick and it does get out there and everybody hears it that's listening on that radio.
Yes. And
so
that's key.
If you have like you're about to be in a fight or something, you get on that radio and you say that, or you say certain words on that radio, the rest of the cops that hear it are going to be, that's one thing in Lancaster County. Oh, you are going to have a shitload of cops. Right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and that's good to have, like you say, if it's working and it's different than a phone where you're talking one-on-one, you get word out to everybody.
And that hasn't changed since the beginning, really. The radio's got better. Probably the signal's better, but the idea is still exactly the same.
But on the flip side, with the phone, let's say we just had a robbery, right? And the business that was robbed had video surveillance, and they pull that up. Now with the phone, as the investigator on scene, minutes after this happened, I can take a picture of that surveillance camera screen of the suspect
and have it out on
and put that out.
Media or whatever.
I can put that out. I mean, the ways I can use that are pretty much endless, but I can do it like that. So, I mean, that's just one small example of the way that we can get or leverage modern technology to really enhance what we do.
I do have a question. And you said right there, you use your phone, you take a picture of that film, and how great video is now towards, why don't these grocery stores, Walmarts have cameras that take better pictures. that they're, you have these Google Earth
Yes.
things
Mhm.
where
Yeah.
I can go on that computer, put myself down on a street and read signs.
Yes.
But yet Walmart can't take a clear picture of a guy stealing something. Why is that?
It's interesting because one of
That's-
one of the new car washes moved in many years ago, and the camera system in the city B little car wash is better than a big box store. And you're
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
the amount of money there was not even comparable, and we solved crimes, probably more crimes than that little,
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
hitting things or
Right,
whatever
right.
and not report.
But it
You
amazes
know,
me.
there's a couple things there, and at the end of the day, I don't know because I don't run those places. So
I'm thinking they
there
just
are
don't want to spend
factors
the
that-
money on their
it
camera.
can be that, right? It can be money. Storage of high quality video gets it takes up a ton of space. I
Right,
mean,
okay,
a ton of
I
space.
see what you're saying there.
And
And their cameras
It
running
co-
all the
and
time.
that costs money,
Yeah.
and they're running all the time. And then if you have, multiple views, that's. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking lots and lots
Right.
and lots of video.
Yeah.
Good point.
And
Yeah, that
That's
actually
good.
makes sense.
Yeah.
so a place like Walmart, for instance, they probably have hundreds of cameras, if not 100.
Right.
Close.
And
So that's,
They would-
the
they would almost
storage
need
issues with that are
building just for their
astronomical.
servers.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
And
That's
so it's sort of this balance between how good does it have to be, and does it do a job that's good enough
that
most
people will
of the
think
time?
twice before they do something.
Yeah, or does it give us enough of a lead to kind of go on without being such a big problem to maintain?
Now, also on the other hand, with today's technology on any computer in anybody's house, with the ability to manipulate photographs and videos,
Mhm.
do you? In my mind, it is not out of the realm of possibility where somebody could have something out for somebody else and make a crime scene look like somebody was there when they really weren't. It is
Well, in
So it's-
mine, my specialty was forensic photography,
okay.
and the megapixels. Obviously,
So there is abilities
there
to
is-
determine that, hey, that wasn't the original part of this
No,
video.
there's metadata there that
Yep,
shows a
okay.
whole lot of information
Right.
that's hidden within the details of that picture.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that I had taught when I was in school was when you take that picture as a kid, the location services are on, if they are
Right.
in your photos. It has the potential of pinging exactly where you took that picture.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that's not a safe thing to do.
Right.
So yeah, you're
So-
right. And the cops, could they have been manipulated pictures? They can, but I guarantee you that it's going to be found out. In today's world,
Right.
you can't,
Because
hardly
you
do that.
have,
Right. So
even if a cop tried to, somebody was doing something he didn't like, so a
Yeah.
cop thought, all right, I'm gonna get this guy.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna make up this video.
Right.
That guy's lawyer, I mean, if the guy swears I was not there,
Yeah.
they'll take it somewhere where they can say, no, that's,
didn't
and
happen.
then,
Yeah, I mean,
and then it's
it's-
going to go back on the cop. And
it's really, I mean, it doesn't seem like, but it's very basic. It would be very, very difficult to do that well in a way that
that
it
nobody
wasn't
would-
obvious
yeah.
to, pretty much anybody that looked.
Okay.
But you bring up a point, which is that even knowing that information is there as part of that record, right? So when we talk about a digital photograph or video, like what we think of is what we see on a screen,
Right.
right? But what's also there is all this other data
behind the scenes.
behind
Yeah.
the scenes. 20 years ago, an officer didn't need to know that to be a police officer. Now we got to not only be aware of it, but
Yeah.
understand how to look for it and interpret it
Right.
to say, no, this photo that looks like it's showing something was actually taken 2 weeks after the person's claiming that it showed something,
Right.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
So there's all of this technology also brings a whole level of knowledge and expertise into policing that we didn't have,
Right.
10, 20, 30 years ago.
But you need to know that now because there's people on the other side that know that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you got to sort of keep the upper hand, or
Yeah.
at least be able to be on equal playing fields with them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like your picture of the retro bar.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never actually sat next to you behind the bar, but on every picture, I'm there right next to you.
Yeah. But if somebody that knew what they were doing and looked at the data behind that, they would be able to see that, okay, there was just an empty bar, and then there was this picture of this guy, and then there was this picture of this guy got superimposed in that.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I can make it look like, someone was somewhere that they really weren't. You know?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Your baby picture with the
yeah. I mean, and it's very easy. I can do it. I can take an old picture and run it through one thing online, not even on my computer, and it strips all the background, and then I can use that person's body and put it wherever in a matter of seconds.
Right.
And I'm not a technology wizard that I can do it.
Right.
So I'm sure there's people out there that, the thought probably crossed their mind that, or even if they were guilty of a crime, maybe they're trying to say, well, no, I couldn't have been. Look, I was here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I took this picture and I was on the beach or whatever.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
So you got a lot of stuff on your, and this is new. I never wore one of them. Is that the camera?
This or this?
This?
No, this is actually just a push button for my radio. So my radio is here, and this is the push to talk, one of the push to talk buttons. But the microphone, I wear an earpiece. So you see now a lot of officers are wearing an earpiece where they can listen to the transmission in their ear. It's a little clearer for some of us, and plus it's quieter. You don't have to have it up so loud.
Right.
Or if you're in a loud situation, it's easier to hear.
Yeah.
If you're next to a guy who's wanted, and if he didn't have that, and like radio guy's like, he has a warrant, and he hears it,
takes off,
and he's running out here off to the races,
where he can sort of whisper it to you.
Well, now he's in his ear, like, he's wanted, and he can act like nothing's going on.
Yeah.
But the microphone is actually also here, so I don't have to put my mouth down to a microphone to talk. It's just it picks up my voice, and it's noise canceling, which is kind of nice. So if we're around traffic or like loud trucks, like at a fire scene or something like that, that helps with that. But
and now you say
this is a mount for our body cameras. So we're actually in the midst of rolling out our body cameras. We got those as part of a grant program.
Oh, okay.
That's a lot of technology, and unfortunately, sometimes it comes with glitches, and so we're having some technical issues that we're working out before we get them actually out on the street with the officers. But that's coming in the next few weeks.
There again, with the storage issue, like when you're out on your shift and you have your dash cam, your body cam, when you go back at the end of the day, do you dump that down in a computer or so that
So it used to be with our dash cams, we had to. Well, I mean, in the old days, you had to pull a tape out and and swap tapes.
Well, and we even had the old days where you had to pull a cruiser in the garage and
that's what I was
physically put in the cord.
Yeah, you had to plug it in.
Okay. And I was running the system back then, that particular system, but then it became
now
the next step.
We pull into the parking lot at the police station, and when the camera system in the car is on, there's a wireless network outside, and it just automatically starts uploading. When it works right.
Right.
And it works right most of the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
And so within, minutes, it's going up to a server. And we have recently also transitioned with that storage issue with tons of data. We are now storing a lot of that video in the cloud.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that's kind of how that problem gets solved. But there's a lot of restrictions on how you do that because of security issues, and that people's personal information is involved because of just the nature of what we do. So we have to be careful with that. And then when anytime there's a problem with it, working out the bugs can be a challenge, and certainly not something that I envisioned when I got into police work 20 years ago that I would be in the middle of, which is a lot of what I end up doing these days.
Which is really cool. If you look up, the cloud actually is the Ephrata Police Department emblem.
One quick question, because I know this is going to baffle me, because in my mind, I guess think in old days, but how many police officers, sergeants, detectives, how many people on your force are there employed by Ephrata Borough or
Yeah.
Ephrata whoever?
So the police department employs I'll say roughly 35 officers. It depending on retirements and hirings, there's a little bit of fluctuation, but that's about the number. Of those, we have 3 detectives. Right now, we may have a 4th one after we get some hiring worked out. And then there are 4 shifts or 4 platoons of 6 officers each for patrol.
Okay.
So
more than
typically,
envision.
typically on a day shift or a night shift, you would have 6 officers working at a time.
Okay.
During the day, you would also have some detectives working and some administrative people working, like myself and the lieutenants and the chief.
Okay.
And then we have some support staff doing office work and things like that. And we have a community service officer, so a non-sworn officer that does parking enforcement, does a lot of our fleet management work, and a whole lot of other stuff. Tracy Hawes is one of the hardest working people in the borough.
She's fantastic.
Yeah. We have a school resource officer. So what Paul did for a while, we have somebody in the Ephrata School District full time.
Volunteers. We have Woody.
We have volunteers. So we have Woody Long and Ray and there's a few others.
There's a group of and they volunteer their time to come in and do tours for kids.
Special events. They'll bring out special vehicles if we need them to, so we don't have to pull from patrol officers to do that.
Work.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody calls, I guess if you call 911, you get the dispatch, and then that person would call, like they just radio the whole police force, or they radio they just get a hold of you and then you tell your guys where to go. Like if I call 911 and say, hey, somebody's breaking in my house, the 911 person's going to get a hold of somebody in Ephrata.
Yes.
Is that the
so
shift
they're gonna
supervisor or
your call's going to go to the central dispatch for Lancaster County.
Right.
As long as you're in Lancaster County. And that dispatcher is going to ask you your location.
Right.
And they're also going to have access to, if you call with the cell phone, almost any cell phone now is going to give them some idea of where you are.
Right.
It may be very exact, it may be somewhat general, but it's going to give them some kind of geolocation. They'll use a combination of where you say you are and what the phone location is to enter information into computer-aided dispatch system.
Okay.
Right. So they're using a computer system that helps them decide where this call is supposed to go and how it's supposed to be dealt with. And in that computer system are all kinds of if then scenarios, right? So going back to what I said about how our area is broken up into zones,
right?
Each of those officers is responsible for calls that come into those zones. That officer has a unique identifier, and when we come on duty, that officer is assigned to that zone with the county dispatch.
Okay, all right.
They put that in their computer system, and then when a call comes in that zone, the computer system says that officer is supposed to be dispatched on that call. And if that officer is busy, the next officer that we want to be dispatched to that call, and so on and so forth.
They won't call a supervisor only because it would waste too much time.
Right.
Yeah.
Then he has to make a decision who he's going to do the call. It goes directly to the guy who's going to respond to the call, which is very smart.
No, it is, and great for technology. But again, like I guess you have backup plans if the grid goes down.
Yes, because that's
I mean,
unfortunately that's happened where there's been some glitches, nothing to do with our.
Yeah,
there was
but there's
it
just
does.
could
It
be,
does happen.
And there is backup,
and that's why it's important then where you have dispatchers that are familiar with areas that can be very helpful.
Right.
You have a supervisor or police officers that are familiar with an area, and so in those times, if the system goes down and dispatcher says, "Hey, Ephrata Police, I have this call."
Right.
An officer says, "Okay, well, I'm close to that. I'll go take care of that."
Okay. Because I mean, it could happen, and and I picture it because I know how it is in other trades. You get these young people coming in, and they should still know the old way of doing things
Mhm.
in case of that type
Sure.
of thing.
Yeah.
And they're all probably like, why do I need to do that? I can just do this. Well, what if that don't work? It's
So one quick thing, when I left, you could also text 911.
Yes,
Is that still in place?
I believe it is. Yeah.
So if you were in a case where you weren't comfortable, hey, the guy next to me is about ready to kick my butt. I
Okay.
needed help. Okay. And he hears it. Okay. That's not good. I mean, you theoretically could text 911
Okay,
of
now that
your
yeah.
issue, and
Yeah,
they would
I
dispatch it
didn't
that
realize
way.
that.
And that's big beneficial to somebody who
Sure.
would be very close to their assailant.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I got a million other questions, but we're sort of out of time.
Like, was there anything that you wanted to talk about that was like on top of your list that you felt like this was?
I think we covered a lot of good ground.
I guess
Yeah.
my only question left, can we taser Paul?
Yeah, I've been there.
You mean right now?
As a way to go out with a big
Yeah.
bang.
I was pepper sprayed and I was tased. And I'll
That's
tell you
not
what,
fun.
the pepper spray, I'll probably take that anytime. That lasts longer and it sucks. But tasing,
I'm surprised. Is that, and real quick here, is it a requirement that when you join a police force, you get to see what that feels like? Is that required or just voluntary? Or
It's voluntary.
because
Yeah.
I mean, I would think, even though it may be few and far between, there would be some sort of liability if you forced an officer to get tased to be part of your people, and he has an underlying heart condition and it kills him.
Sure.
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 That's
Yep.
Yep. But since he's already been tased once, we're
yeah,
probably
it's on
probably
video.
okay.
It's on video too.
It is on video. Yeah.
My kids thought it was,
actually, bring that along.
oh yeah, no, we're not doing that. Yeah, my kids thought it was funny.
Hey,
I got tased
It
until
could be a deterrent to crime.
I
If
know.
they see what happens.
I will
Wow.
say that people that have been tased before have a lot of respect for the taser, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah,
much like the paddle in school used to be.
Yeah, probably.
Then they got rid of it, and
Yeah.
all hell broke loose.
Well, it's good. When I screwed up at the police department, they didn't come over with a taser. That wasn't good.
But it would have ended the screwing up.
Yeah,
All righty. Well, I guess we'll call it a day there. But I would again like to thank Sergeant Randolph for his time.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And if you ever get the feeling, hey, I'd like to do that again, and we can talk about a whole nother raft of stuff.
I got stuff on the list of things that.
I mean,
just
that's
in case
entirely
we
up
ran
to
out
you.
of things to talk about, and we didn't even touch on. So we can certainly.
45 minutes goes way quicker
does.
than
It
you
goes
think
by
it would
really
be.
fast.
we didn't even touch on the piece of when bad things happen.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
whether it
no,
be
and that would be a
at the
whole different
workplace,
day.
at the workplace, and how you would deal with it as an employee when the cops come, because they don't know who's good and bad.
All right.
At a crash scene,
Right.
The cops come into a crash scene. Most people have been in a crash. So what do you expect, and what is their priority?
Right.
And they just walked by you and went somewhere else. And well, I was just in a crash. Well, there's reasons why they do that.
Right.
And driving down 272 on a Friday and not understanding why all the side streets don't move.
Right. Yeah.
There is so many things we didn't go over.
Right.
That we easily could touch.
No,
base on, but,
and I mean, I think we're off next week because he's away, and unless somebody twists my arm, I'm probably going to be off. And then we got May 6th. We do have a guest, but then after that we're open. So I mean,
there's a bunch of
it's
people
sort of first come, first serve out there.
Absolutely.
But I learned a lot in just this little bit of time.
Great.
And if people have questions, right, and you want to put them out there for us,
either ahead of time if you know he's going to be a guest, or right here on the screen, it is possible to type. So
and if you wanted to contact Sergeant Randolph, you could do that.
Yeah, can I plug?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
not myself, but one of the things that we have kind of made a priority with the police department is community outreach and social media, especially. And so longer than I think, probably, we started a Facebook page, and we've been pretty active on that. So if you want to follow us on Facebook, we're on Facebook. It's Ephrata PD. It's the one in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, not Ephrata, Washington.
Yeah, there is Ephrata, Washington. That's true.
And we recently started an Instagram account where we are posting some things that are a little on the lighter side and not such. There's some news things on there, but it's some things that
To
are
show
fun.
that cops are human.
Yeah,
And like
and-
to have fun.
Yeah, so we're Ephrata_PD on Instagram, so go follow us both places.
And then
And
Crime
I'm
Watch.
always happy to talk. Yeah, Crime Watch is our
Throughout the whole county, I believe, right?
yeah, it's pretty much countywide,
Yeah.
and that's a good
Including-
place to find out what's happening with the police department, what we're doing,
Yeah.
and where we release details on incidents and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, and that goes across the county too, even the district attorney's office. You know,
Yes.
they had done, they would highlight somebody. They highlighted me as a school resource officer at one
Okay.
point. You can look that up.
Right.
They'll highlight people that you know they find they need more information. Maybe the public needs more information.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't talk about accreditation either. I
No.
had gotten a bunch of questions. As much as you were in the paper, some people didn't read it, and they were like, "What is this? Is that an award?" So there's a whole
Kind of.
No,
It kind
no,
of-
he
it
can.
kind of is,
He
but
can come
that's-
back 5 more times.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
care.
There's all sorts of
All
good
right,
stuff.
we're
so.
going to sign off at this point. Thanks for tuning in.
thank you.
And again, you can watch this forever on. It's going to be saved on Facebook and on the YouTube channel. We'll see you guys next week.
Or 2 weeks.
Or yes, in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
That's right. All right, that's that.
Yeah.